Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything or anyone. I just like knives. And you're joining me on another bit of this tour of my collection of small folding pocket knives. Today we're going to look at this little knife. This is a Boker Urban Tracker, the wood-scaled version. Very attractive little knife that has some things going for it, but also some problems. So let's have a look through this. I first saw this knife in photos and some review sites. I liked the looks of it. It seems to be what I'm looking for in a knife. It's small, it's pocketable, it's got attractive, sort of classy wooden scales, and an attractive gentlemanly shape. I thought, great. I had an opportunity to get one used and picked it up. Now, it's important to say that again. This is a used model that I bought, and I don't know its history, because I'm going to be quite critical of it. And it is possible that it's had a hard life, it's been damaged in some way, and that that's the root of some of the problems that I'm going to describe. But I don't think so. I think that my criticism is fair. So anyway, we'll get to that. So formally, this is a Boker Plus Urban Trapper. Boker is a German design company. Plus is their higher-end range of knives. This is the Urban Trapper, and there are some other sizes of essentially the same design available. There's a petite, and there's also a gent. This, as I understand it, is the largest of the three. And this is the model with the Cocobolo wood scales. There's also a pure titanium framed model. Mechanism, this is a side flipper. You've already seen the flip. And it's a liner lock. And the blade operates on caged bearings, and it's almost very smooth opening. It would be very smooth if it wasn't for a problem I'll get to in a moment, but it does open quite nicely. Let's look at the size. This is a long knife, long and slim. It's not as big as it looks. No, that's not what I want to say. It's less big than it looks. Anyway, here, it's long and slim. Here's what I mean by all of that. Let's compare it to a few things. Now, compare it to a large knife, a Sabenza large. It's considerably smaller than a Sabenza, both in length and in width. A large-ish knife, it is essentially the same size as the Benchmade 940. That is, it's the same length. It is quite a bit slimmer, as you can see. The knife that I really think it makes sense to compare it to, because I believe they're tackling the same market, would be this one. This is the CRKT CEO. And as you can see, very similar. Almost exactly the same length, and both long and slim, both designed kind of to attract the executive pocket jewelry crowd. In actual numbers, well, the most important number is it's about 1.1 pocket calculators in length. Another number, the blade is 3.5 inches. That matters in some places. It's well over the 3-inch limit that matters in some places. The weight is very light. It's only 51 grams. And that's very light. And compare that to, the mini Griptilian, sort of my standard, which is 72 grams. So it's 25% lighter than that. It's even a little bit lighter than the CRKT CEO. This is 59 grams, 51. So it is light, and you feel that lightness in your hand. Now, unfortunately, with the extreme lightness comes a certain amount of sort of lack of robustness, but we'll get to that. The blade, I think, is very attractive. It is a long, thin, clipped point blade, and I do like the shape. It's made from VG10 steel. And I confess I don't know very much about VG10 steel. I don't think I have another knife that uses it. So I just read a bit about it online, read what I could find, and from what I can tell, this was considered a great steel, novel and exciting when it came out. But that was about 20 years ago. So although it's still a good steel, some people like it a lot. It's not quite up to the modern super steels, but pretty good is what I can tell. I can say that it sharpens well, and it seems to have good edge retention. especially for this knife, which is not going to get used much. The edge retention should be fine. I doubt I will have to sharpen it again. It was pretty sharp when I got it, but it was used, and I could tell just from the grind marks on the bevel that it had been sharpened by someone else and not particularly well. So I touched it up, and as I say, it's plenty sharp enough and probably won't need to be sharpened again. When we're talking about the blade, on the clip side is the BZ logo. There we are, BZ, which is the designer, Brad Zinker? Yes, Zinker. I wasn't sure if there was an L in it. Sorry, Mr. Zinker, Brad Zinker. And I must say, I like his design. Very attractive. The body interior is a titanium frame, and there are Cocobolo scales. One nice thing about the design, I think it's attractive, is that exterior, only the scale screws are visible. 3 there, and well, 4 there, because the clip screws integrate as part of the scale screws. But the mechanism screws, the pivot screw and the backspacer screw, are underneath the scales, so that simplifies the appearance and I think makes it quite attractive. The clip is a deep carry clip, not 100% deep. You can see it doesn't go all the way to the end of the body, so it's like 95% deep carry. I don't know if I like the clip. I like deep carry. I don't know if I like the clip. The shape is a little odd. It's got this weird flair to it. I would call that like a duckbill. And I don't know that it suits this style of knife. You know, compare it to the CRKT CEO, whose clip is really designed to support this looking like a fountain pen in your pocket. This doesn't look like any fountain pen I've seen. The other thing is the clip is made from titanium, and it's somewhere between unfinished and, I don't know, what is that, sandblasted maybe? It has a matte, dull look to it that looks a little bit like it's been stained or corroded. I'd like the clip on such a fancy looking knife to be a little classier. So, oh well. No lanyard hole wouldn't make sense on a knife of this style. I usually comment on whether knives are ambidextrous for my left-handed friends. So as a flipper, you know, the opening mechanism is certainly ambidextrous. You can open it right-handed, or I don't know if I can do it because I'm really awkward with my left hand. There, you can open it left-handed, no problem. Closing, well, as with most liner locks, it really does have a preferred side. You want to be able to push the liner with your thumb, and I'm sure that lefties can do that, but I'm in danger of cutting myself. So, you know, I'd say not really ambidextrous. The clip is right hand only. There's no option to move it to the other side. So not very ambidextrous. Manufacturing, the company is German, and they say on their website that they manufacture in various countries. According to Blade HQ, this particular model is manufactured in China. I don't see any confirmation of that on it, but that's what they say. So let's go through some things I like and some things I don't like. Start with the likes. I like the appearance. I like the dimensions a lot. The long, thin look. The blade shape. I like the wood scales, Cocobolo scales. The wood scales, of course, take a little bit of maintenance, a little wax now and then, but I actually enjoy doing that, so I do like the look. And I like the smooth opening after the first little bit. Yeah. Once it's on its way opening, it opens very smoothly and quite pleasant. The first 5 degrees or so of rotation are a little bit rough and scrapey. We'll get to that. But once it's moving, I like the opening mechanism. Other thing I like, again, common on many flippers, and this one does it well, is when you're closing one-handed, the flipper tab acts as a finger guard. So I unlock, start closing, and the contact with my thumb is the finger tab, not the blade. I like that. That helps me to stop what I'm doing and get out of the way before I close it. Now, what I don't like, there's a few things, a couple minor and one big one. So the minor first, well, one is it can misfire when it's opening. There we go. If you're not sort of really aggressive on the finger tab, it won't open completely. So there we are. So it's important to give it a good, muscular flip. That's true with most flippers. Getting more serious. Something I really don't like is, I'm just going to get a flashlight here. The titanium frame, so you can see it peeking around the wood, and of course you see the edges of it here, is unfinished. And can I make that show up there? It's actually quite ugly. Like it looks unfinished. It doesn't look sandblasted. It looks unfinished. It's filled with sort of random scrapes and marks. And this edge view of the scales, sort of, anytime I've been away from this knife for a while and then I have a look at the edge-on view of the frame, I think it's become dirty. And it's not. It's not built-up grime. It's just the unfinished titanium peeking out. And I think it's quite ugly. The edges here as well, it looks like it has been scraped to hell. And it hasn't. At least I don't think so. As I said, this is a used knife. Maybe somebody took the wood scales off it and beat the hell out of the titanium frame, but I think it's just not adequately finished. If it wasn't for the other problem that I'm about to describe, I might try to fix that. I might take it apart, take the scales off, take the two frame components, and see if I couldn't smooth them a little bit with some 2000 grit sandpaper or something. I bet it could be made to look a lot nicer. Anyway, that's not the big problem. The big problem is this: blade play. This has the worst blade play of any knife in my collection, and maybe of any knife I've ever handled. Now, I haven't handled some really awful knives, so take that statement with a grain of salt, but it is really bad. If the blade is unlocked, you get a sense of how bad it is. So I'll just unlock it with my thumb. Look how I can move that blade. Now, of course, that's not really fair. It's unlocked. So if I lock it, the fact that it's locked is holding some of the blade motion. I don't really get any motion in this direction. But laterally, there is still substantial blade play there. I can move the end of the blade, I don't know, what is that, 1/4 of an inch, and I can actually see motion happening here. Watch here, for example. You can see me opening and closing that gap between the blade and the frame. Blade play is really awful. Now, I really wanted to believe that there was something wrong, and it was something I could fix, so trust me, I tried. I've taken this apart twice, looking for an adjustment, looking for something that had been aligned improperly, a bearing that was in backwards, something that would explain that blade play. And there isn't. The explanation is that the point of contact in there is very small. The bearings are very small. Long blade, long body, small point of contact. There's just a lot of play, and it would require miraculously accurate machining to reduce it much. So it's quite bad, and it has some other effects on the knife. So let's look at the first one. If I close it, you see the blade is not centered. There we are. Now, some knives, when the blades aren't centered, you just find the right screws to adjust and it becomes centered. That's not the problem here. The problem here is that the blade is so loose that the liner lock pressing on the blade, remember the liner lock is a spring piece of metal, it's pushing that way. The liner lock pushing on the blade is pushing it over to the side. So it's the power of the liner lock is pushing the blade that way. Watch this, I can pull it back. And you can actually hear it whacking against the interior liner when the lock pushes it back. Here's another effect of the blade play. Listen to this. I'm going to bring my microphone down here. That is the presentation side of the blade scraping against the presentation side of the inner liner, because it's got so much play that's being pushed over there, and it's actually rubbing on the metal every time I open and close the knife. Frankly, I can't believe that. So I don't care for that. Blade play is bad, and it has several bad side effects. Another thing that I don't think is related to the blade play, but I don't like, is when it's locked, when I go to unlock it, listen to the here, I'll bring the microphone in here again. Listen to this. I'm getting it scrape every time I go to unlock it. It's an unpleasant feeling. And I think that that is because of the unfinished titanium. I think the lock face is also unfinished titanium. And so I'm just getting sort of uneven contact and scraping there. And it's an unpleasant feeling in the thumb. Not as bad as the blade play, but something I would complain about even without the blade play. So the overall, the knife it's really beautiful to look at. I love it. But mechanically, it feels quite poor. I don't like the feeling of it when I'm using it. I just like looking at it. And I actually worry about its security. If I'm using this for anything more than opening a letter, I would worry about it closing, and I would worry about breaking it. There is very little metal in there to connect the blade to the body. I'd have to take it apart to show you, but it's quite flimsy. So disappointed in that for something that looks so nice. Well, let's go through my other knife ratings just to finish the job. And we'll start with the NTGK, non-threatening gentleman's knife. And we'll do non-threatening first. The good news is that it opens quietly, so that's doesn't make people jump out of their seats and say, "What was that?" I think the classy-looking wood scales de-escalate the threateningness of it a little bit. It's sleek. It looks handsome, not tactical. Those are all good things. The bad is, like any flipper, it's hard to open slowly. Okay? And so, very nervous people do look at that and say, "Oh, switchblade." You have to explain that it's not a switchblade. You can open it two-handed, which I think helps de-escalate in front of nervous people. But there's no handle. Opening it two-handed requires that you catch the blade and then open it. So although that works, it's a little dangerous. And I don't think it would convince anybody that the knife is not a threat if I opened it and ended up bleeding from the thumb. And finally, the blade is long, right? It's long and stabby looking, and that may scare some people. So it's a little bit threatening looking. All told, I'm going to give it a B+ for non-threatening. Now for the GK rating gentleman's knife, well, how's it do? Well, the good is it looks really nice. Long and slim and elegant, very nice. Classy wood scales, very nice. Understated, classy markings on the blade, that's okay. So those are good things. The bad is that unfinished titanium. Every time I look at it, I think it's grimy or dirty or corroded, and that really detracts from it. I can't imagine using a high-end pen that looked like it was dirty or corroded when it wasn't. So I think that really detracts from it. And the flimsy mechanism, just you have to use the mechanism before this becomes obvious, but it just makes it look cheap. It makes it look like something that is pretending to be quality rather than actually is. So I'm going to give it a B- for gentleman's knife. And rolled up as an NTGK, it'll get a B. It's okay. Now, next rating, the KN rating, which is what will my knife nerd friends think of this knife? Well, the pro is the flip is nice. Oh, see, there's a misfire. The flip is nice. And the attractive design. Okay. But the negative, and these are things that my knife nerd friends will pick on, the blade play is embarrassing, frankly. I'd hate to have a knife nerd handle that and experience that blade play. The blade centering is bad. My knife nerd friends would think that I had not been paying attention and hadn't adjusted the blade play or the blade centering. The blade scraping on the open and close is embarrassing. The flimsy feeling, the grating feeling, none of these are good things. I'm going to give this a D as a knife nerd rating. I think my knife nerd friends would not like this, despite its handsome looks. And finally, the CMR, cut myself rating. Well, it does okay there. Okay. I handle it fairly often, and I handled it a lot, taking it apart, trying to diagnose whether it had a problem, and I've never managed to cut myself with it. So it's designed in a way that is safe to operate, and I appreciate that. So that brings us to the end, the summary. This is an attractive-looking knife from a distance. That is handsome. Closer up, the unfinished titanium starts to jump out at me, and I think looks quite bad. The really bad blade play gives it a flimsy, untrustworthy feeling. So honestly, I wouldn't keep it if it didn't look so nice. But I am keeping it because I have two uses for it. One is it's a nice upscale letter opener. I could see myself keeping it at an executive desk. Right now with COVID underway, we don't have desks, but I could see this being at an executive desk and being used as a high-end letter opener. Nobody's going to come in and do a knife nerd assessment on your letter opener. And I also see potential uses as a prop. I do have a couple of uses where a nice looking knife is all I need, and I never expect to open it and use it. For example, I occasionally wear a kilt for formal occasions, and this would make a nice skin-do, which is the knife that goes in the stocking on your stockings with a kilt. And it's purely decorative. It's not at this point. It had historical meaning, but now it's purely decorative. Well, this is decorative, so I could see using it for that. So I'm keeping it for its decorative, attractive nature. But I can't imagine using it for anything other than maybe opening letters. Now again, I'll emphasize mine's used. I don't see where it could be out of adjustment or damage, and I've looked hard. But maybe that's possible. If I ever get a chance to handle a new one, I certainly will, and I'll see if this compares favorably to a new one. If I had an opportunity to buy a new one, I would certainly handle it before I bought it, because I'm glad I didn't pay full price for this. That would have been very disappointing. As a very low-use decoration, it's very nice. Well, that's the end of this look at the Boker Urban Trapper. Thanks for watching. See you again.